Skyscraper window cleaners. What is the most bizarre thing you've ever seen on the job? My uncle has been doing this job over 20 years, so I've had a few weird stories off of him. A woman filming a corn, a sign on a window asking them to not clean the bathroom window. Obviously, not knowing which window was to what room, they went about their jobs. The bathroom had disgusting stuff hung up. A hoarder whose windows were slowly being hidden by years of collections. A famous footballer who was not with his wife. Not long after this, the company was asked to sign NDAs. What looked like a criminal scene, Uncle reported it but was later told it was fake red liquid for a TV show that was filming there. His favorite? A dog breeder, and every 4 weeks he went back to clean the building and got to see the pups growing up. When he went back and they were roughly 12 weeks, there was one pup left. He asked for her and now he's got a Rottie called Holly. And then there's Holly the Rottie, proof that even window cleaners find their happily ever after, one adorable pup at a time. Story 2. One time in college, I answered a help wanted ad for a window cleaner. I thought it was going to be one of those high-rise jobs. Instead, when I showed up for the interview with some weird-looking guy in a parking lot, I spent the day with him going from house to house cleaning people's windows. He told me to pretend I was his nephew, and he kept introducing me to customers that way. Then when we were cleaning windows, he kept telling me his fantasies with the housewives. It was super weird. Then at the end of the day, he told me it was just an audition and tried not to pay me. One of the strangest days of my life. Story 3. Not me, but my uncle has been doing it for years and had many weird encounters, but this one is kind of sad. Having changed companies, he started at this new apartment building. Near the top, there was this old lady with a dog. The dog was young enough and was always excited to see him. Eventually, he started talking to this woman when he was working through a small window, and they became somewhat friends. Then one day, almost a year on the job, he went up and for the first time, the apartment was empty, except for the dog, which he found odd, so when he was finished up, he tried to check and see if she was in but got no reply. A day later, a member of staff from the apartment block, I think it was the landlord but I can't remember, got back to him and told him that she passed away and that she had no family. Assuming that my uncle knew her, the landlord asked about the dog, seeing if there was anything that could be done. My uncle, being the kind fellow he was, took the dog. Nearly 10 years later, my uncle still has a dog, a little terrier named Pumpkin. Story 4. Not a skyscraper window washer, but was a janitor who had to wash the windows in a 6-story building as part of my job. So I used a mix of ladders and rappelling down from the roof with the harness to clean the outside windows. So one day I was washing the outside windows on the executive floor, where all the bosses and higher-up employees had their offices. I was done with one window, so I moved to the next window and looked in and saw the CEO of the company doing something in his office with the door locked and the lights off. He looked up and saw me in the window, and we made an uncomfortable eye contact for like about 15 seconds. Then I just pretended I saw nothing and kept washing the windows. Never spoke a word about it to him or anyone in the office. But the last day I worked there, he gave me a farewell card with $200 in it and a free solar-powered portable phone charger that the company produced and sold. Story 5. Okay, so not exactly what OP was asking for, but a funny story nonetheless. I was in medical school on my psychiatry rotation at the local VA hospital. We're in the 6th floor inpatient psych unit seeing a guy with schizoaffective disorder. We were asking him about any hallucinations or delusions he may have been having, and he tells us that he was seeing robes outside his window, and he was worried people were trying to get into his room. Seeing that there were clearly no robes outside his window, we made note of his persistent symptoms and went about our rounds. About half an hour later, we get to another patient's room, and we suddenly see robes dropping from the roof down the side of the building. Turns out the poor guy wasn't hallucinating. They were just cleaning the windows. LOL. Story 6. Worked as a rope access window cleaner for 10 years. As you'd expect, we see quite a number of melons, which always brightens the day, but its counterpoint is the roughly equal number of terrible gunts on display. Always wave and have a chuckle with the kids you see. Their initial shyness and surprise at seeing you is invariably replaced by total glee when you wave at them. It never gets old and it always makes your day. I've witnessed numerous amateur corn shoots, 1 or 2 professional ones. Used to regularly do the glass on a full flat of lingerie-clad escorts, but you'd also see a darker, sadder side of humanity, like flats bare of furniture, but for a mattress and some clothes, serial hoarders, some truly awful nests, and also some people who you suspect have seen no one else but you for the week. Once you've been doing the job for a while, it's 99% drudgery with the occasional brief distraction of something like the above to keep your brain from turning to jelly. Story 7. I used to live in a high-rise condo. Sometimes the window cleaners go up the side of the building where my small bathroom window is. One Saturday morning after a crazy night out, I ended up needing to take a really spicy bear crap. So I opened up the window and sat down on my toilet, hungover with my eyes closed, thinking about where I went wrong in my life choices that led me to this moment, where passing away seemed like a reasonable alternative. Then I hear my windows close. Apparently, the window cleaner needed to close it to go up higher. Cue the slow ascent of their window elevator thing. They saw me destroying my toilet. We make eye contact, and I gave him the universal nod of understanding. He gave me one back and continued his slow ascent upwards at like an inch a second. Story 8. Not a window cleaner, but had a funny experience. While consulting at an ad agency in New York, they gave me a sweet office to use on the 25th floor for the 6 months I was there. I just come back from a 3-martini lunch with some of the execs and the client. I'm sitting in my air-on chair trying to fight the food coma and 3 martinis. I decided to lean back, unbuckle my pants, and loosen up my belt. My desk is at a 45-degree angle facing away from the exterior windows. After getting into the most lazy and comfortable position in the air-on chair, I swivel towards the window and see 2 window washers smiling and laughing. One guy wrote on a notepad, "I'll have what you had. Where did you go?" We had a back-and-forth conversation for a few minutes by writing messages on notepads. The CCO knocked on my office door. I had completely forgotten about our scheduled meeting. He comes in and sees me, belt and pants unbuckled with the 2 window washers, and just mutters, am I interrupting anything? I explain the whole thing to him, and the window washers are laughing the entire time. They see him laughing and write, "All cool." Then the CCO proceeds to pick up a Sharpie and notepad to join in. Everyone was having a great time. He invited the window washers to lunch with us, too. Story 9. Not a window cleaner, but I used to be a security guard years ago. I worked at this office building that had 3 towers side by side, all of which were 20-some-odd floors. Window cleaners came every so often, and it was always the same 6 guys, 2 to each tower, and the job was done in a few hours. One day, one of the cleaners was a new guy. I paid no mind to it. Same company, and the other 5 people are the same. About an hour later, I get a call from the building owners whose office was on the 20th floor in the center tower. Apparently, the new guy had to use the washroom while cleaning the windows of the east tower, so instead of raising the platform and going to the top floor like they are supposed to, he decided instead he'd whiz off the scaffolding. By doing this, he mooned the entire 18th floor where he was, rained whiz wherever the wind took it, made his partner retch off the scaffolding, flashed about 10 floors of worth of people, and lost his job. On the bright side, probably was the funniest report I'd ever written. Story 10. Not what I saw, but who saw me? I had just come back from maternity leave and needed to pump. My supervisor offered up her office. I didn't even think about closing the blinds because we were on the 22nd floor. I was sitting on the floor because I needed to be close to an outlet. I was just about finished when I noticed cables moving outside the window and saw the top of a man's head. Anyone who needs to pump knows how important getting every last drop of that milk is. I don't know what to do, so I stood up and faced the opposite wall, trying to get my garments up and deal with 2 bottles of milk. I never turned around. I was so embarrassed, I unhooked my pump and put my top back on and capped my milk. I got everything cleaned up without turning around, so I have no idea what this person looked like or how they responded to seeing me trying to get dressed, get my pump dealt with, and not spill any milk. Story 11. I'm not a window cleaner, but an electrician that does rope access work to fix lights and signs every now and then. One time we were installing lights around the top level of a hotel. It was near the end of the day, so people were checking into their rooms. A little girl pulled open the curtains and screamed when she saw me on the other side, then slammed the curtains shut. Then she came back with her family and figured out there were no cops needed. Another time, I was standing on a ledge about 6 stories off the ground, waiting for my coworker to send another lamp to me. It was a cold day, so I had a heavy black coat on and my black balaclava. I was standing inside of hanging to give my legs a rest because it was taking him a while to get more material. Then I hear sirens. At first, I wasn't worried because I was downtown. There's always sirens. Then they get close to me and stop. Here come the firemen, and they're looking up at me. Here comes the police, and they're asking me to come down. I get to the ground, and they're asking me if I had a weapon. I get patted down and told them no, I'm an electrician, and I'm there to fix lights. The only thing in my hand was a phone. Someone called me in saying I was on the side of a building with a weapon. They got their laughs, and I decided that was a great time to go to lunch. Story 12. Ex-skyscraper window cleaner here, but in Hong Kong. Skyscrapers in recent times have these fire floors built in, like every 15th floor is where the whole floor is empty, no walls, no windows. It's just like as if someone forgot to build a floor there. It's just pillars, and the use for them is if fire is breaking out, it won't spread up past that floor. Anyway, a lot of people in the building I work at likes to use that empty floor to do weird things. Some will practice music, some likes to eat their lunch at that place. It does have a nice view of the sea. Also, some likes to think no one will see them have intimacy if they do it behind a pillar. We never paid much attention to anything that goes on that floor, even if they are having intimacy or whatnot. It's just funny when they're going at it good and proper and not realize we were silently lowering down from above, having heard them go at it from 2 floors up. I don't know why people do it. Everyone who works in that building knows we clean windows every day. Maybe they just couldn't hold it in any longer. Who knows? Anyway, it's always funny seeing them on that floor, completely spaced out of their minds, but with 2 blokes staring at them, hanging 40 floors off the ground in a cock's cradle. I always love seeing their face turn and twist when they spot us, watching them like watching corn. Story 13. I was an early bird at work and was in our New Jersey City location instead of Manhattan the day this happened. There were huge windows in our conference rooms that were pretty much the entire wall overlooking the Hudson River and the New York skyline, and it's absolutely stunning in the morning and evening. I'd gone for my second cup of coffee sometime before 9 a.m., and there was a commotion in the conference room that was being set up for a meeting that was due to start in 5 to 10 minutes. Everyone was gesturing to the window cleaners to get down, so the colleague who was with me and I went in to see what was happening. This was the morning of September 11th, 2001. One of the window cleaners had heard the plane, turned to watch it, and thought he was having a heart attack when it hit the tower. It was a 2-man crew, and the other man was able to get them both down. We heard later it was just a panic attack and he was fine. We all stayed in that conference room, watching it all unfold before us. A short ferry ride away, but looking close enough to reach out and touch. Mr. Window Cleaners from my old building, if you're out there, please give us your perspective on this. Story 14. Not window washing related, but I feel this story goes along the type of glimpsing into windows vibe you're looking for. My wife and I moved into our apartment about 5 years ago, and pretty shortly afterward, a house was built right across the alley from us. No big deal, it's kind of a developing suburb, whatever. It was cool watching a house go up from an empty lot over the course of however many months. Well, the house was finished and built, and then a year went by, and there were never any people around. Never a car in the driveway, never kids running around, or any sign that anybody was moving in. But there were always lights on, like it was kind of just on display. And then another year went by. For a couple of years, it seemed like some real estate company just decided to build a house and never got around to selling it. This still isn't that weird. There's a lot of property and houses for sale in our area. We were convinced that it was literally just a big empty house. So one night, my wife and I decided to just look inside one of the back windows because, hey, big empty houses are cool. The backyard was still kind of an empty dirt lot, and there was no fence. It was literally a 15-foot walk from where we would park our car every night. So honestly, not trying to do anything creepy, just trying to see what the interior of this big new house looked like, we walked up and looked in. Following our line of sight, our view was through the exterior window, into what looked like a nice kitchen, and past that, a hallway, and directly through the open door of a bathroom, where we saw an elderly woman with white, disheveled hair sitting on the toilet, weeping. We had no idea this house was inhabited at all, and we just witnessed what seemed like a pretty intimate moment. Or maybe every moment in that house was like that? Who knows? We felt like we crossed such a line. It was so disturbing and unsettling, we went straight into our apartment and went to bed. The house is still there. We have no idea who actually lives there. Top 5, one of the weirdest, most uncomfortable moments in my life. Story 15. Years ago, I was washing windows in a Chicago condominium on the Gold Coast on a 40-foot long stage. We were instructed not to work past 5 p.m. due to residents' privacy. Fine, but it was 4:30 p.m. My partner and I wanted to squeeze in one more drop, but we'd have to work fast. We approached the 23rd floor, and what to my surprise did I see on the kitchen table? A young couple going at it. I recognized the female. She was the pool lifeguard. They were 5 inches away from me. It was surreal. I was shocked. I froze. She looked at me without any interruption and said nothing to her partner. That turned me on. Meanwhile, my window washing partner was done with his half and was already moving to the next floor down. I was excited, and I didn't want to move. The stage was slanting in at an angle. Everything was sliding away from me. I couldn't even talk. My partner marched toward me, wondering why I didn't do anything, and he witnessed the fiasco himself, and he knocked on the window. The guy turned around and attempted to lower the blinds, reaching out with one hand, but only locked them to the ground. Heck with it, continued on the kitchen table. Story 16. I had a friend that washed high-rise windows, and one day, while standing at the copier in front of the window, the platform lowered, and there he was. I smile and wave. He says very loudly, "Hey, can you hear me?" I shake my head yes, as a few people on the very quiet floor look. He obviously didn't realize how loud and clear I could hear him. He then proceeds to say, "I said screw a few floors up," and a lady turned around. He might as well have been standing beside me yelling that sentence. Behind me, a sea of employees prairie dogged above their workstations. and management walked out of their office. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. Ha! It's the ultimate "I can hear you now" commercial, gone like horribly wrong. Can you hear me? Yeah, so can everyone else. Story 17. I was on the roof of an old 3 or 4 story school that had been converted to apartments. I was servicing some equipment and there was some window washers there working away from us. At one point, I noticed the guys had tied their descent rope around the metal tray that our cables run through, which is only a thin gauge of metal screwed down to patio stones to keep it from blowing off the roof. Their safety rope was tied around this sketchy wooden box that was protecting something on the roof. Clearly, neither one of these things was even close to structural items or something I would ever consider trusting my life to, and the one guy was hanging off of it washing windows, the thing some people do for money. Story 18. I was working on a high-rise office building. When I got to the 44th floor, I looked in the window just out of curiosity, as one does. Inside, I saw 2 people, a guy and a girl. I watched as the guy pulled out a weapon and hurt the girl. I guess I made a noise against the glass or something because he looked right at me. He pointed his finger at me and mouthed, "You." After a while, my friends and family started disappearing one by one. I was getting paranoid because I knew it was that guy I saw. Then one night at 2:47 a.m., I heard a window break from downstairs. I froze in bed out of terror. I heard his footsteps coming down the hall and up the stairs right to my door. He kicked it in and came right at me. I tried to raise my arms in defense, but I was too late. His weapon was on me. He put his arm in me. He moved it around for a bit before he pulled out the serious tag that OP forgot. Story 19. After 5 years of cleaning skyscrapers, you think that I would have seen way more bizarre things. However, it's kind of rare because buildings give out notice, and because we put our ropes out before we repel them, most people see them and close their blinds. Besides the odd bear person, you don't see all that much. That being said, last year my colleague and I were walking around a terrace, and after opening a gate and walking through it, we came face to face with a couple having intimacy on the couch about 5 feet away from us through the window. Wanting to make things the least awkward for everyone involved, we just quickly looked the other way, and the dude jumped up and closed the blinds faster than anyone else has probably ever closed blinds before, and we just went about our day. Another one of my colleagues came across a guy fiddling with his head hanging off the bed looking out the window upside down. After exchanging eye contact, the guy just smiled and continued, and that's the weirdest I've heard of. And if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 20. Not the window washer myself, but I am connected to both parties involved. My roommate had just started working for a chain window washing company and was just starting to rappel down the side of the buildings. He and another are going down side by side as he is teaching him the ropes. They are going down a large office building, and he says, "You're in for a treat. There are a bunch of ladies on the next floor down that have a habit of flashing the window washers." So, sure enough, the next floor down, they get a bit of a show as they do their work. They smile and wave and move on. Around that same time, I get a call from my mom and talk to her about plans we have for a meal on the weekend, and I hear a commotion in the background. I ask her what's up, and she says the younger staff have a tradition that is happening, and she missed out on it this time. We make plans, and she says to invite my roommate over for dinner as well. So dinner comes around, and even though my roommate and mom have met each other before, he gets the spidey sense that he's seen her recently somewhere else and can't place her. As you have probably guessed, she was on the phone in the background of the flashing. I found out my mom regularly flashes the window washers at work. Now, this is where I say, what a coincidence. Story 21. Not a window cleaner, but someone who had their windows cleaned on the 11th floor. My flatmates failed to tell me about the cleaning, and I fell asleep still in my very scant garments from work with one of my work friends asleep in the room next to me. I woke up to 2 guys flat out staring at us. Didn't even avert eye contact whilst I rushed around trying to close the blinds. A few days later, 2 of the girls from work stayed over again, and we all fell asleep just in our garments, very intoxicated and tired with the blinds closed behind, of course, lesson learned. Nope, one of them woke me up because the cleaners were staring through a tiny gap in the blinds at us. Story 22. I was working in rope access, not window washing, but painting, fixing cracked renderings, repairs, etc. I have a few stories. One time we were painting people's balconies. You could swing and climb onto each balcony from the outside, finish your work, and move down to the next one. Now, the harnesses we wear can get a bit tight and annoying, so getting onto a balcony is a good chance to unclip yourself and take the harness off for a while. So I took off my harness and had my back to the sliding door of this apartment. I was adjusting my pants and shirt because they were all bunched up when I felt someone behind me. I turned around and there was a lady with a bewildered look on her face taking photos of me. I thought she assumed I was urinating or something and laughed as I went to explain myself. She cracked the door open and told me the cops would be there in 5 minutes, then made a fiddling motion with her hand and said, "You're having a fiddle on my balcony, you dirty." At this point, I thought, uh-oh, this is going to be bad. I harnessed back up, got back on the rope, and went down. She was already telling my coworkers, and by the look in their eyes, they believed her. The building manager said that the offender should be removed from site. It wasn't funny at the time, but now I'm able to laugh about it. Another time, I had a heavy repair to fix broken concrete around a window. Thing is, there was a Chinese guy who sat on a chair at that window for 3 days, one hand fiddling while the other hand played solitaire on his phone, from 7 a.m. till 3 p.m. for 3 days, half a meter away from me. Story 23. I lived in a high-rise in Denver with floor-to-ceiling windows. The window washers sat on little sketchy planks of wood with a bucket on one side and a towel on the other. Incredibly sketchy seat at 30-plus stories. They clean the windows twice a year, and I'd chat with them through the window screen under the window they'd cleaned. The window with the screen didn't open more than 8 inches, but the screen had a small cut at the top for washing smokables. One day, I was home for lunch, puffing on Colorado's finest, and I heard someone say, "Damn, that's a good." Turned around, and the guy washing the windows pointed at me, then motioned to pass it his way. Without hesitation, I passed it through the screen. Buddy was cool as heck. We shared a and chatted a bit. I'll never forget that Viper. Viper was a G.I. Joe riddle about a foreign window washer. The Viper was coming to wipe your windows. Story 24. Not a window cleaner, but I installed the moving windows for suites at several football stadiums, like Mile High Stadium in Denver, Clemson, Duke, to name a few. While at Ole Miss, we arrived on site at 5 in the morning on a Wednesday, just like any other day. There were only 2 ways up to the suites, which was a super sketchy 5-story construction elevator or a 5-story hike upstairs on the outside of the building. Naturally, I took the stairs maybe 4 times out of absolute necessity. So we get in the elevator, half intoxicated from the night before and half asleep, start going up and start hearing a loud knocking noise above us. We all but whizzed ourselves. We stopped on the next floor and got out to see 2 dudes with a sleeping bag who decided to camp on top of the elevator overnight. They had left their clothes on a ledge near where the elevator was originally, so they didn't have access to their clothes at this point. Because my boss was the biggest a-hole in the world, he just saw this as a not my problem situation and got back in the elevator. He took it to the top floor, which is the one we were working on, pocketed the elevator key, and went about his day. They had to figure out where the stairs were, like a quarter-mile walk through a labyrinth in the dark, and walk down and re-find the empty elevator shaft. I gave the directions as best I could, not sure if they ever found their way back to their clothes. Story 25. I worked with a high-rise ex-window washer named Mickey at a chemical plant long ago. We were replacing process control sensors at the top of a 300-foot-tall tower. There was a ladder that we had to climb to get to the top. It took between 15 to 30 minutes to go up or down that ladder. At the top of the tower was a platform with a huge pulley and about 1,000 feet of rope to lift tools and materials up and down the tower. There was also no smoking in the plant. When 11:30 came around, all of us would start down the ladder, except for Mickey, who remained at the top and had a smoke or two. Then he'd throw a loop in the rope, put his foot into the loop, grab the other rope to control his speed and descend using the rope, which took about 30 seconds instead of 30 minutes. This went well on for a week or so until the chief safety inspector stepped out of his office one morning to see Mickey doing his rapid descent. He fired Mickey on the spot. There were 3 or 4 of us left on the job, but we were all scared working so high up, so losing Mickey really slowed us down. Story 26. Not a window cleaner, but a scaffolder. This happened about 8 years ago. I was working on putting a tow board on a platform with another apprentice, and he used to always stick his tongue out when he was concentrating. We were working on a very cold day in northern Alberta, and it was about minus 25 degrees Celsius, so we were balancing on the balls of our feet, squatting down. My partner apprentice lost his balance and tipped forward and got his tongue stuck to the midrail. Our journeyman turned around just in time to hear me yell, "I'm gonna whiz my pants," and watch my partner rip his tongue off the metal rail. Funniest thing I've ever witnessed in my life? No, I didn't end up peeing my pants. And my partner's tongue healed up about a week later. Our journeyman also traded him out for a different apprentice the next day. LOL. Story 27. Not a skyscraper cleaner, but a former residential cleaner. I once had a famous hockey player's house as one of my stops for the day. And when we arrived, he told us to leave the upstairs for last because his wife was upstairs with her baby. I mentioned we still needed to check for outside-facing screens so we could get them out of the way for the ladder guys to go around and then clean them from the outside. He didn't give an indication that it would be a problem. I go upstairs and his wife is laying with their baby in their master bedroom. I was stunned and said, should I come back later? And she said, yeah, if you wouldn't mind. She didn't seem too upset about it, but I got the heck out of there because I was genuinely worried about getting my bum beat. So I ran out of the house and told my friend what happened. He didn't believe me, proceeded to climb up his ladder to start on the upper window, which was apparently a little window looking into their bathroom, and saw her walk into the bathroom and nearly fell off his ladder. Story 28. My friend is a window washer and does inside as well as outside windows. He uses the sudsy bucket and squeegee technique. He was asked to clean the inside windows for an 80-year-old lady who had smoked all her life. She had been in this house for decades, just smoking away. After scrubbing and washing and squeegeeing for a couple of hours, he started to freak out. He had unknowingly collected so much nicotine in his bucket that he was having trippy panic attacks. He had no idea what was going on, so he took a ladder off his truck and climbed on top of the roof. This is where he takes breaks. He did a few more windows when he felt better, but he used the same nicotine water. It took him 3 days to complete this small job, and he didn't figure it out until years later. Now, he pays attention to the smoking habits of his clientele, especially if they want the inside surfaces cleaned and whether the walls have lighter areas behind the pictures. Story 29. So I worked for a window cleaning company that had us work the ground contracts when we were not hanging from ropes. This is when I go to wash the windows at a local bank. Usually, I would hit a window, and the person on the other side would turn from their work and wave or leave their office. Something about my shadow or the noise of the scrubber hitting the window. Anyway, I hit this banker's window from the outside, and it instantly sets me off as weird because he hasn't turned or acknowledged me at all. I start squeegeeing his window, and I realize why. He is intensely watching clown midget stuff in his office, door closed. I was stuck there for a minute, taken aback by the dude's brazenness in the middle of the workday on a work computer. Then I snap to and remember he could still turn around, so I don't want to make this situation any more awkward. I decide I'll just finish quickly and quietly and no one has to know I caught this guy. That's when my squeegee betrays me and loudly hops across the glass. This man shot up so fast I thought he had jumped. He didn't know what to open on his computer, a blank Excel workbook, Yahoo News, Outlook, and another Excel sheet, never turning to acknowledge the window cleaner who caught him. The absolute worst part, I had to go in and clean the inside windows too, including his office. Ah, yes, the squeegee betrayal. It's like a spy movie where the gadget malfunctions at the worst possible moment. Story 30. Window cleaner, but not high-rise. Been in 50-foot lifts, but not hanging over buildings. Was working on the outside of the third floor of a house of a local family the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. The 3 kids had just gone home from freshman and sophomore year of college. I was in my junior year. One of the twin sons flips on a light, pretty much sunset at this point, comes rushing into the bedroom, and then dashes into the bathroom. Then I see a head peek back out the doorway at me once they realize I was on the roof outside the bedroom window. I played high school basketball against a dude, neighboring schools, same district, on 4 or 5 occasions just a few years prior, which made it extra weird. Where it gets really awkward is 30 minutes later when I'm downstairs finishing up some insides of the first floor windows as the family sits down to supper about 10 feet away. Story 31. Not a window cleaner, but a few years ago, a friend of mine lived on the 30th floor of a building. They get a window cleaner out there once a week, usually on Tuesdays. When he came home from college for the summer after his second year, he probably forgot that his windows get cleaned on Tuesdays, as he was getting intimate with his girlfriend with the blinds still open. My friend is the extremely jealous type, so as they were in the middle of it, he turns his head and sees the window cleaner trying to keep the grin off of his face while cleaning the windows. I don't know what exactly was going through his head in the first 2 seconds of seeing him, but he instantly got off of her, got a chair, sat down right in front of the window where the window cleaner is pretending like he doesn't see them, and starts going to town on himself while staring at this dude. His girlfriend instantly covered herself and ran to get her clothes. But my friend, without skipping a beat, just sat apparently with an extremely angry look, staring at this guy's thing in hand, and just kept going until he moved to the next floor. I don't know whatever happened to this window cleaner, but what interests me more is what was going through his mind as it was all unfolding. Story 32. I'm a consulting engineer working in building science and structural restoration. A number of years ago, while working in Toronto at a 38-story high-rise, we, 2 contractors and myself, were reviewing glazing and sealant beads and came down upon a window where a woman was cleaning her bikini area. We are always taught to see something inappropriate and look away. Apparently, we looked so far away we missed the metal flashing lip at the next level down. Our swing stage tilted one way and swung back, and all 3 of us banged our heads into the lady's window. The glass didn't break, but it sure scared the lady. Story 33. When I was about 16, I was doing window cleaning and grass cutting as a little side job for some extra money. When I went to a house where a few people had just recently moved in, I thought I'd get to them before someone else did. Knocked on the door, agreed on the price, and got to work. All was fine till I got to the last window, one of the bedrooms. 2 people, a guy and a girl, were in the process of spiking. The girl was already out of it. The guy was starting to nod off. The guy was the same dude who answered the door to me. He must have forgotten that I was cleaning his windows and maybe I interrupted him. Well, he forgot to close his blinds, but something was off. The girl was coding, and I've never seen someone nod so quickly. I hadn't really seen anyone nod at that point. I was only 16. But the girl coding, I phoned for an ambulance and found out they had both coded, deliberately. Never saw them again till like 5 years later when I saw the girl. I asked if she remembers anything from that time. Turns out she survived it, found the light and all that stuff. But her fella passed away that day, something I'll never forget. A scary sight to see at 16. She thanked me for saving her life and said she will always be grateful. Story 34. I only did the job for about 8 or 9 months, but saw two unexpected things. I got to the top of the ladder and saw a guy I know is a priest enjoying something. I scurried back down the ladder hoping he would hear me and then slowly went back up. He obviously had heard me because when I got back to the window, he was standing up reading a Bible. The other time, I got to the top of the ladder and saw a woman in her 80s sitting on her bed. I was sure she saw me, so I gave her a few minutes before going back to the window. When I get there, she's sitting in exactly the same place, smiling at me. I got a job in an office soon after that. Story 35. Window cleaner here. I was up on a ladder doing an older single woman's house and happened to be at her bedroom window. She was in the process of getting out of the shower and bent over, putting on her garments, and just happened to turn around to find me washing the window. I may add this woman was in her early 50s and extremely good looking for a 50-something-year-old woman. Anyway, she turned around and stood up, and then I saw her melons, which were fake, but very nice, lol. She didn't freak out, but closed her blinds, and when I finished the job, I knocked on the door to give her the bill, and all she said to me was, "I hope you enjoyed what you saw," with a little devious smile. To which I replied, "Yes, ma'am, thank you very much." I took the check and went on my way. I do her house every 6 months now, and we know each other on a first-name basis, lol. Story 36. In college, I worked all summer on the window cleaning crew for the university. The buildings were all older, and we had to have 2 people working the spray pool from the ground and 2 people inside with towels ready to catch any water that leaked in from the spray. Most of the dorms were empty, so that was pretty uneventful, but a number of the on-campus apartments were still occupied. One studio apartment was occupied by a hoarder. There was 3 feet of garbage with a path leading to the bed. The bed looked like someone had dumped a bucket of water on it due to how much grease and oil covered the sheet, and the smell was unreal. Another apartment had us paranoid that the owner was going to come home and end us all. I like guns, but this guy was a sketchy kind of weapons enthusiast. Soldier of Fortune magazines littered the table, along with empty 7.62 by 39 cardboard ammo boxes and walls decorated with various targets. In the middle of the kitchen table was a big novelty-sized hunting knife stuck pointing down in the table. So we make our way upstairs and find a ton of seedlings and empty containers for what I'm assuming is an outdoor grow operation. All the windows have been blacked out with plastic and aluminum. At that point, my coworker and I turn to each other and go, "Well, time to get the heck out of here." We did turn the hoarder into the residence admin. We did not turn in the militant gardener. Story 37. My dad has been a roofer since he was 15. One day, he took me to work with him to double-check a job that his guys recently did. He puts up the ladder and secures it and said I could come up. I'm scared of heights, but it was only 3 stories up, so I went. Dad was up already, so I'm climbing up very carefully and past a window. And sitting in front of a vanity mirror is a young girl, maybe 16. She was in the process of cutting her hair with scissors, but in such a strange way. Aggressive-like and making angry faces in the mirror. I was just standing there staring at the scene. She had cut her hair in choppy bits above her chin. She puts the scissors down and stares into the mirror and starts laughing in the mirror. Deep guttural laughs, like a young girl doing an impression of a manic man. It all took less than a minute, I'd say. My dad calls me and I look up at him. Then back to the window and yep, she's staring at me. I scurried up the ladder and avoided the mom when she came out later. I think I was more embarrassed. Story 38. I'm not a window cleaner, but I worked for PacSun a long time ago, and my boss told me to go up a ladder to change light bulbs above the changing rooms. They had walls and doors but no ceilings. I was at the top of the ladder before I looked down, and all I see is 4 different women looking at me like some sort of creep. I had toolbox and light bulbs in hand, so I'm clearly working, but in that moment I yelled, "Hey Angela, how about we sort out that light bulb issue after we close and there's no women in the changing room who now think I'm a schmuck?" I did the light bulbs that night. Story 39. Not a window cleaner, but I was a person inside. I lived in a 3rd-floor apartment with a roommate. I had a gentleman friend who I'd recently started seeing romantically come over late at night, and he wound up spending the night for the first time. We woke up that morning to some people on a ladder cleaning the gutters or something. They awkwardly try to avoid eye contact, and I think we just ignored them and rolled over and went back to sleep. But when they moved past my window to my roommate's room, she, being curious if my gentleman caller and I had fooled around, asked the guy, "Psst, hey, is there a guy in there?" And said that he shifted his eyes side to side and did a quick nod with a straight face, and then got back to cleaning and got the heck out of there. The way she described it cracked me up. Well, if you liked any of these stories, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.